Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest introduced to you now. Rosemary Laberee, aka Ro, has been married to her husband, Pete, for 35 years, and they have four grown children and a grandson. Her undergraduate degree is in business, and she has a master's degree in health science. She is also a senior fitness expert certified and certified osteoporosis peer educator. At age 60, Rose set out to reverse osteoporosis, something her doctor had said was impossible, and they were wrong. After encountering many women who had been told that there was nothing they could do besides taking medications for osteoporosis, she decided to take her story to Instagram. She now has a growing audience eager for information about what lifestyle changes they can make to move the needle in the right direction when it comes to bone health. Recently, she retired from her work as a consultant in a nationally acclaimed pediatric research institute in order to devote more time to building her Instagram following and spreading the word on her motto, Build Bones Now, Ask Me How. In her spare time, she lifts weights, reads books, and continues to learn about human biology. You can find her on her Instagram profile at Coffee Books Barbells. Ro Laberee, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, Casey. Thanks for the
Uh,
invite.
it's absolutely an honor to host you. You are in the Philadelphia area, is that right?
I am Philly born and raised and still
Born
here.
and raised.
We
Okay.
raised our kids in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, my husband and I, and now they're all full and grown. So we moved back to the city and into apartment life. It's
Yeah,
fun.
gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. I'm just in the Salt Lake Valley area of Utah. We got our very first NHL team last year, and a few weeks ago, I got to go see the Philadelphia Flyers play in person. My first time ever seeing them, so that was
Oh, how
pretty cool.
exciting.
Yeah.
How
Are you
exciting.
much of a sports fan?
I am not, remarkably. My kids are, and they
Okay.
have taught me a little bit about what's going on in the sports world, but I am rather oblivious.
Okay, gotcha.
By,
Probably a
by
good
way of
thing.
example, last year when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I traveled to New York for something, and we live in a high rise with an extraordinary view of the Parkway, which is where everything happened. And I had friends saying, "You're leaving? You're leaving your Philadelphia apartment where everything, it's like ground zero for this big celebration." And I said, "Yeah, I'm just not into it." My kids couldn't believe it either, but yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, that's funny. Philadelphia sports fans are savage. So it's probably a good thing that you're not part of that. In the hockey game that I went to, there was a bit of a goof up. The Flyers had like a wide open net and missed on it. And we came back and scored and came back to win the game. And the fans from Philly were just absolutely brutal on this poor player who missed his opportunity. So again,
Yeah.
probably a good thing that you're not much of a sports fan. You're not missing out on much. It doesn't sound like.
Oh, yes, I know many of them. Rough around the edges. Yeah, very serious about their sports.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, we are here to talk about bone health. Such an amazing topic. And I'm so excited to get your story and hear how you learned about this. Can you tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Of course. So I sort of stumbled into the idea that you can reverse bone density issues. I was metabolically unhealthy. I didn't know that because I actually didn't know much about metabolic health, but I knew I had low bone density, and I had known actually from an early age 44, when my doctor asked for a DEXA scan proactively to his credit because I went through early menopause. And he thought, gee, if you've been low estrogen for a long time, let's have a look at your bones. And I had osteopenia, and he immediately suggested a bisphosphonate. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what the words meant. I knew I didn't want to be on a drug. And so I just said, I'm going to see if I can solve this myself, and didn't have another DEXA scan for a long time. Fast forward to 2016, in between when I was 44 and I was 58, we'll say, um, I had a few DEXA scans, progressively worse. They just got worse and worse. But in 2016, I got a big scare, really scary numbers, very low bone density, very high fracture risk. I asked my OBGYN what I should do, and he absolutely insisted that I take one of the many drugs available. And he explained the mechanisms for all those drugs. He was really knew that stuff very cold. And when I asked him, like, what can I do? Like, I want to try to fix this. What can I do? He just said to go to CVS and get Caltrate, calcium chews, and to take them twice a day. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. If it were that easy, other people would be doing it. chewing on two chocolate things with calcium twice a day cannot possibly be right. At the same time, I was taking care of my mom who was dying of dementia. And I was doing a lot of research on what causes dementia. I kept coming back to metabolic dysfunction. Every bit of digging I did ended right there, metabolic dysfunction. So I decided I got to figure out what that means. I didn't know what those words meant either. And as the more I dug, the scarier it got. And I then knew that my mom, who didn't have much else wrong with her except that her mind was gone, it was metabolic dysfunction. She had low grade she was pre-diabetic. She was on blood pressure medication. I mean, there's a list of things that I know because of the people that you interview that you're well aware of the laundry list of items that that are all red flags for metabolic dysfunction. My mom had all of them, although she kind of presented as otherwise healthy. And I started thinking, well, if all these things affect the brain health so much, what else do they affect? And I started to connect the dots like, well, wait a minute. All these systems of our body are connected. So anything you do that's bad, any poison you consume, or any movement you don't do, you're perturbing a biology that is designed to work perfectly well by not treating it well. And I started to wonder if my bone density issues had anything to do with metabolic health. So I then started to actually ask for the right blood work. I wanted my A1C. I bought a blood pressure monitor. I started to take my blood pressure, shocked to find out it was high. It was relatively high, like 145 over 85 every time I took it. And I thought, holy cow. And my A1C was around 5.8, which is on its way. But I noticed that it was going up every year. My average blood glucose when I got my annual CBC panel was going up each year. My doctor didn't think it was an issue. I started to unpack all of these things. I started to wear a continuous glucose monitor. All the things I did, by the way, I had to pay for myself. This is actual healthcare. You pay for your healthcare. The stuff that we pay for through our insurance, that's catastrophic care. If I get hit by a truck tomorrow, I'll be glad that I have my medical insurance and I will go directly to a good hospital and get all my stuff reset and hopefully get better and all of that. But that's why I pay for the medical insurance. But that's not my healthcare. My healthcare has become every single thing that I pay for out of pocket, every proactive thing that I do. And that is how I have actually built my health by spending money, frankly. So the continuous glucose monitor, bought a blood pressure cuff, bought a kit for pricking my fingers when I don't have, until I learned what are the things that perturb my biology the most. And, they are carbohydrates. They are a poor night of sleep. They are bad stress. And then I set about to remove the things that I could to control for every single thing that I had control over. And I exercised hard. So I always knew that exercise was good. And frankly, I've always been an exerciser. I've never not exercised when I was raising my kids. And I was on all fours picking up toys and running around at playgrounds. And I was physically very active. I didn't lift weights then, but I didn't have time to anyway. But as soon as my sons hit their teen years, they were talking to me about lifting weights. And they bought all kinds of stuff. My basement was full of barbells and things that I just thought was bro-y equipment, not really meant for women. They taught me how to use it. They taught me how to do deadlifts. They taught me how to do back squats. They cautioned me, like, don't try to get the bar on your back by yourself. Wait till we're here and we can help you. Like, don't do this. They were cautious, but they wanted me to lift weights. So honestly, my kids have taught me so much. All four of them have contributed enormously to the bank of information I now have on what it means to actually be strong, what longevity takes. So this is the long growth period that kind of finished when I was age 60. That is when I knew, like, okay, I'm now on the right track. I have now built the right habits. I'm going to go ham on this exercise thing. I'm going to lift as heavy as I can. I'm going to push myself and I'm going to stop being scared of breaking. So I'd had great training with my sons. I also had a couple of fantastic books, Mark Ripito, Jonathan Sullivan, and a couple other amazing lifters with the best solid advice on how to protect your back and how to do this the right way. And I doubled down on nutrition, stopped eating all junk food, went low carb. I don't know if I'm in ketosis because I've never measured that, but I think I'm probably always in ketosis because I really don't eat carbohydrates. They make me hungry and cranky and tired. So when I go out to dinner with my family, if I have carbohydrates because I can't avoid it, 2 hours later, I'm hungry. And I'm like really jonesing for something sweet and pasty and carby. So eating carbs begets the desire to eat more carbs. So I really, really avoid carbohydrates. And so at age 60, I had all my ducks lined up. I knew that I was on the right track. And I started to just kind of go hard on everything. I had my bone density score frighteningly high. I waited 2 years or more before I got another bone density test. I was very, very scared that despite all that I was doing, it was still going to be lower than it was. And I was absolutely jazzed when my spine score was minus 3.1. And after a couple of years, it was minus 2.5. I'm like, wow, that's a big difference. And there's no way I could turn back now. Every density score I've gotten since that year, 2016, the numbers continue to go down. I just had one in December 2025, and the numbers went down again. So again, I have to pay for my DEXA because I no longer have osteoporosis. I have nothing. My hips are normal at this point, and my back is osteopenia. So really, they don't really want you getting a DEXA scan if you don't have osteoporosis. And how they tell if you have osteoporosis, you fracture. What the heck? You fracture, and they say, yeah, okay, well, let's see. You probably have osteoporosis. It's very that just infuriates me. So I've been working full time in this research institute, loved my work there as a consultant, learned volumes about how research is done. Um, but I decided I really wanted to get the word out to other women. There's a ton of stuff that you can do to improve your bone density scores. There are things you can't change. So there are risk factors. You can't do anything about it. Like being female is a risk factor. Being postmenopausal because you don't have estrogen is a risk factor. Being white is a risk factor. Being small is a risk factor. So you can't really change any of those things, but you can change your metabolic health. You can start to lift weights with supervision if your fracture risk is very high. You can try to fix your sleep. You can not stop smoking, stop drinking, don't do drugs. All common sense. What is good for your body is good for your bones. What is bad for your body is bad for your bones. It's not really a mystery. I think that the thing that I feel most passionate about and what really gets my ire up is when I speak to other women who have the same experience when they get their diagnosis through a DEXA scan and their doctors only talk to them about pharmaceuticals. They never tell them that it's even possible to do anything themselves. There can only be two reasons for this. The clinician doesn't know, shame on him or her, or the clinician knows, but in a vote of no confidence in their patient, they don't say anything because they don't think their patient's going to actually do any of the hard work associated with this. Shame on them for that as well. I can't think of any other reason. And that a clinician would not bring this up when a patient comes in and they've got a DEXA scan that shows osteopenia or osteoporosis. If they don't say, change your nutrition, stop eating processed food, increase your protein, work on your strength training, strong muscles build strong bones. If they don't give them the 101 on how you get strong bones, they're basically saying this patient's not going to do this. Well, they might be right. Let's say even 80% of the patients are disinclined to do the work and get disciplined. 20% of them will. And so I think that really bothers me. And I hear things. I heard something on a podcast recently, and I'm not even going to say who the podcaster is because these people are fairly famous, talking about bone density in women, talking about muscles and what you can do to fix your bones. And the statement was made that you will never, once you have osteoporosis, You will never return your bones to what they were when you were age 30. So I have a major problem with that statement. There's hardly anyone that knows what their bone density was at 30. Hardly anyone. Women don't get DEXA scans at 30. I mean, unless you're fighting cancer in your 20s, that the regime, the chemotherapy, the drugs, they cause serious bone loss. And so then I can imagine someone knowing what their bone density is at age 30, but in no case does anybody have their bone density at 30. So they don't know. My bone density scores are now better than they were when I was 44. I do not know what my bone density was at 30. Maybe they were already bad. I smoked for 15 years. I smoked from age 15 to age 30. So that's a huge risk factor. I drank alcohol. I ate basically 4 or 5 Snickers bars a day. That was my go-to when I was hungry. I just grab another Snickers bar. So I'm sure that I was metabolically terribly unhealthy. And I'm sure that my bone density was not zero is like the ground level. You want your bone density to be like zero. I mean, if it's 1 or 2, wonderful, wonderful. That's I don't think many women who are small ever get a bone density that high. I could imagine a big man with big bones. That's like a bank account with millions of dollars in it. He can spend a little bit every year and he's never going to go empty. There's plenty there, right? So the bigger you are, the bigger your bones are, the more you start out with, the longer that runway before you start to actually have low bone density. But I decided to take my story to Instagram. Actually, my third kid, Andy, is the one that suggested to me. He said, you've got a pretty amazing health span. I actually have a very high VO2 max. I actually have very high heart rate variability and my heart rate recovery. Like if I sprint, I do sprints, like getting my heart rate into the mid to high 180s. And then I stop and sit down. My heart rate will drop about 53 points in the first
Wow.
minute. So it's
Okay.
pretty remarkable. So he is in a line of work where he actually knows these things. So he's like, you're just like this amazing specimen, mom, and especially since you improved your bone density. You should go on Instagram. He's not even on Instagram. None of my kids are active on social media, but he's the one that encouraged me to do it. And I had an Instagram account, but I just had a couple of hundred friends that I would mostly be keeping up with my friends that way. And so I decided to take the plunge. And I can't even believe I never expected to have more than maybe 1,000 followers. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was just speaking out what my experience had been. And so now I find myself in this kind of rarefied space where people want more detail. They want to know exactly what I eat. They want to know exactly what my exercise routine is. And I'm really happy to share it. It is so rewarding. It lights me up. I just love to talk about how older women can turn things around. Now,
That is absolutely
I've been
amazing.
talking a blue streak, so
That is absolutely amazing to think all this work that you've gone through. Maybe it was just a gummy chew deficiency that you had. Maybe if you would have gone back and tried those 2 gummy chews a day, that would have solved all the problems. It's
I,
absolutely ridiculous. What an amazing story. And I'm so glad you're so passionate about it and so committed to sharing the story because you're right. Not a lot of people talk about this. I did want to ask you about your DEXA scan. Most people, when they do the DEXA scan, the bone numbers are there. So sometimes you can get a DEXA scan and they won't show you the bone density scores. But most people are more concerned with body composition when it comes to body fat in particular and skeletal muscle mass. Do you remember anything being kind of irregular as far as those two things go when you were getting some of your initial DEXA scans?
no, I don't. And my body, all I know is that, and I don't actually recall those numbers, but I know that my muscle mass has increased. Not wildly, because you're not very anabolic at the age of 68 and female. But the muscles that I have are far stronger than they were 10 years ago. And I can do things now I've never been able to do. But my body, I look pretty much the same as I have looked my whole life. I weigh 120. I have weighed 120 since I was 20 years old.
Got it.
So my body weight has not changed much. I used to be, I think, I used to have a lot less fat when I was young. I do remember once getting a test when my body fat was 16%, which is pretty low for a female.
Pretty low.
It is
Yeah.
not that now. It's probably 21% or 22%. But I have never really been preoccupied with weight. I don't weigh myself on a regular basis. I don't actually care if I gain weight. If I could gain 10 pounds, I would. I don't, I'm in a complete state of homeostasis with that because I generally eat exactly what my body needs. A ton of protein, a lot of fat, and a little bit of carbohydrates. I mean, what you would get in half a cup of blackberries or one cracker. So I don't actually know how those numbers have changed, but I do know that my strength is, and there's just things I was never able to do. I was never able to do a pull-up my whole life, not for want of trying. I did try. I got my first couple of pull-ups at 66.
Wow.
So yeah, and people, that's why I feel like it's important to get the word out to women because you do think, and I said it myself for so long, oh, well, that's like out of the question for me now. I'm never going to be able to do that. Not that I think I can become an Olympic gymnast, but there's still room for improvement. You definitely should not feel like you're finished because you don't have all the physical capabilities that you had 20 years ago. I am faster in running sprints now than I was when I was younger. Go figure. I work at it. I used to hate sprints, but I now get on a treadmill. I warm up for 15 minutes. I emphasize as much as I can cardiovascular fitness because heart disease is still the number one killer. That's still out. You know, you might have a fracture and your lifestyle is going to change. Your quality of life is going to go down, but you may survive for another decade. Heart disease is still killing more people than ever before. So I do focus also on cardiovascular fitness. I care about it a lot. And I always hated doing sprints. Since I was a young person, I've hated doing sprints. And I started them in my early 60s, where I would, just jog real slow for about 10 or 15 minutes, just, so my body's warmed up. And then I just start doing sprints. I increase it 6 minute mile, 6 miles a minute, 7 miles a minute, eight, and I keep going until I know that I have gone below a 7 minute mile. And I can
Wow.
hold that for a minute. Never did I ever used to be able to do that. And I'm gasping. I'm gasping and I'm ready to grip the handrails on the treadmill. And I don't do it outside because the ground is uneven. I don't want to risk going over on my ankle and breaking. So I'm cautious. I don't do sprinting out of doors. But I do it on the treadmill. I watch my numbers carefully and I have gotten faster. Lo and behold, it can be done. Yeah, so I'm extremely passionate about inspiring other women to just get started. You don't have to pretend that you're an expert in anything to try.
That's amazing. Wow, that's really quick. I'm not that confident that I could run that far for that fast. That's
You
really
certainly
amazing.
could. You certainly
I don't know
could
about
if you
that.
practice it. You
There
you
you go.
wouldn't be able to do if you just went out to try right now, maybe not. But and I was terrified of pressing the button on the treadmill to go that fast because I kept thinking, I do not want to fall and knock my teeth out or something terrible like this. You see these videos. So part of it is just having the nerve to try to get yourself to run that fast. And I concentrate. I mean, I don't do it until my head's clear. I'm concentrating on how I'm moving and where my eyes are and how my arms are moving and just making sure that there's not going to be a blip in my attention that would cause me to slip. But you probably could. Yeah, I'm sure you could.
That's debatable. That's absolutely amazing. What you said about the healthcare system and how you
Yes.
pay for your own health and you use insurance to pay for times where you're
Yeah.
very sick or you need acute care, I think was one of the most insightful things I've ever heard on this podcast. That's an amazing way to think about it.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. When we're talking about the medical system, you already knew that you didn't want to go on any medications. Where do you think that came from? And what do we know about medications for bone health? Like what is being offered? Are they effective? Do they work? Do they have side effects? Like what do you know about some of the medications and why were you so resistant to that from the beginning?
Well, there are basically two different types of medications. Anti-resorptives, which interfere with the osteoclast activity. That is the breakdown of bone. And then there are anabolics, which focus on osteoblast activity, which has to do with the building up of new bone. So I have to take a step back and just say that for the longest time, for as long as I can remember, I have believed that our biology is perfect, that we come into this world with perfect factory settings. We screw them up with things we do or don't do that we should be doing or not doing. So I don't like the idea of getting onto the prescription bandwagon because one drug tends to beget another drug. There's no way that you can interfere with a beautiful system. You get all new bones every 10 years. The breakdown and the rebuild is always happening. That cycle is always happening. And it happens for a reason. You don't want old bone. You don't want to freeze the life of your bones and that turnover, because then that bone is in your body for what, 10 years? 15 years? It's supposed to be turned over. That's the system. That's the way the system is designed. So a bisphosphonate, that is the osteoclast focused medication, and the anabolics, which are the osteoblast focused medications, are interfering with a perfect system. I knew that much when it was first recommended to me, and I knew I didn't want that because that's a pretty fundamental interference, especially for someone who seemed otherwise unhealthy. There are situations where those drugs I would recommend. So if there was an elderly person who is disinclined to do any activity, is not going to lift a weight, reports that they're not going to do this kind of thing, reports that they're not going to stop smoking, I would say, well, let's do what we can and go ahead and take the medication. So I don't think that in every case it's a toxic situation, but it is unnatural. So that's where I begin. I have always had a healthy suspicion of modern medicine. I don't even know where that comes from, other than this philosophical belief that we come into this world pretty much ready for anything with a perfect operating system, and we screw it up. So these drugs, over time, there are all kinds of problems. And if you are on a website for an association for study of osteoporosis, you're going to see reference made to alarmists and crackpots and conspiracy theorists who say that they cause more breaks and you can never go off of them. And they have a ton of side effects and so on and so forth. But all of those things are true. Just like in my life, every time I thought that I was acting and thinking like a conspiracy theorist, when I did the research, I was like, oh, actually, I'm not wrong. This is really bad stuff. Maybe this conspiracy theory thing is just a healthy way to approach modern medicine. And I wish that it weren't the case that usually when things get unpacked, you find out this quote unquote crackpot stuff is actually not really crackpot stuff. And of course, we've seen a ton of that in the past 5+ years with yeah. So I think that it's temporary. It's a Band-Aid approach. So if you're taking a drug, let's take you're getting an injection that builds bones, adds more bone. The scaffolding of new bone that is an unnatural scaffolding has to be interrupted. Even your doctors will say you cannot take this forever. You have to take a vacation from it, and it's literally called the bisphosphonate vacation. There's a term for it. They will try to put you on some other drug. So bisphosphonates, your bones will hold on to whatever gains you got, and you will get gains from these drugs. It's not like they don't improve your bone density. They either freeze it where it is so you don't lose any more, or you get an increase in bone density. After a certain number of years have passed, they will tell you need to take a break from it. If you're on a anabolic drug, you will lose that bone mass right away. It doesn't stay put. You get these injections every 6 months, and it's sort of like filling up the bone, and you have to do it every 6 months. And when you stop, the bone empties. And you're in a state where you will have what they refer to as a rebound fracture. So you're at high risk of fracture when you come off of one of the bone medications. Bisphosphonates will last for a little longer. You won't actually get into a um, rebound bone loss situation for several months, but they will still suggest that if you go off your bisphosphonate, that within a matter of months, you need to start taking another medication. You can never, for the rest of your life, let's say you start this at age 50, you can never not be taking these drugs. There's no situation where it is safe and advisable to stop the drugs entirely because of the rebound bone loss. So I remember asking my doctor in 2016 that what would happen. I said, well, I hope I live till I'm 100. I cannot imagine being on this drug for the rest of my life. If I can only take this for 5 years, what happens then? He goes, well, we would look at other medications. I said, but what if I don't want to be on medications? It felt and sounded so much like a temporary thing. Now, lots of women do it, and that's because it sounds good. It's like, I don't have to think about this for 5 years. That's fine. Just give me the drug and I'll deal with things 5 years from now. Many people have lives where that's what they have to do. They can't look for solutions that take more than a year of thinking and planning. You have to be able to think big in terms of years for behavioral change and life change. Many, many people can't do that. I actually talk to people when I have my one-on-one consults about this very thing, about relaxing, take a breath, step back, think big, think in terms of a plan that's going to be 5 years long, not 5 months long or 5 weeks long, 5 years long, because you want to live for a long time. So don't just opt to take this drug because then you don't have to think about it for 5 plus years. So that's my main problem with the medications. They perturb a system that is beautiful and perfect, and I think presents all kinds of dangers. And there's a good chance the person can be convinced to do what needs to be done in their lives to just have a better system in place for their health, for their body, and then by extension, for their bones. But as so many things in our lives, when we have health issues, modern medicine wants to take that health issue, separate it from the human that has it, and just treat it in a vacuum. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Your heart health, your brain health, your bone health, your muscle health, these are all connected. They're systems that are connected to other systems. So to treat bones in a vacuum by saying we're just going to get this medicine in your bones, to me makes no sense at all. And I think only a truly desperate situation would call for it.
Yeah. Wow. That was an amazing explanation. Thank you for going into so much detail about those medications. I'm so
Sure.
glad that you had that distrust already in the medical system. And yeah, it does kind of feel like tinfoil hat a little bit when it's so ubiquitous. So many people
Yeah.
accept that the medical institution, the white coats, know way more than we do, and whatever. When you were starting to improve, surely you've had some interaction with doctors since your numbers had been improving. Did any of the doctors care at all? Did they ask you what was going on, and were they curious about this patient that seems to be non-compliant with medication, but her bones, which we say can't get better, are getting better magically? Like, did anybody care?
Yes, as a matter of fact, my family doctor, whom I love and I go to once a year, when I had my first big improvement, I said to him, I said, can you look at this? Can you tell me your interpretation of this DEXA? Because you tend to just you get your DEXA, you get your results in your app for whoever you're using for your health, and there's a lot of numbers in there. So I was asking him to kind of parse through it. And he looked at it and he goes, oh, wow. Well, he goes, I know this number has really improved, but give me a minute. I'm going to like on page 4 of the report, something else is analyzed, which is the actual quality of the bone. I think it's called the trabecular bone score. It's separate from your T score. And he went, and I'm sitting there holding my breath as the expert is interpreting these deeper results that I frankly had not looked at. And he said, wow, like the quality of your bone has improved too. What are you doing? I said, lifting heavy weights, lifting weights heavy enough that you probably would tell me not to. I mean, my highest lift on my deadlift is 235 pounds. So if I
Wow.
told him I was pulling 235 pounds off the floor, he would say, stop, like, stop, you are going to hurt yourself. And it's a huge effort. I mean, it is not easy to do, but I know I have a good form. I know how to protect my back, and I know that if something feels off, I literally let go, just drop the weight. It's not rocket science. If you're doing something and it hurts, you just stop immediately, right? But he was stunned. He was stunned when I told him that. I said, well, I stopped eating all processed food. I eat hardly any carbs. I exercise almost every day. I jump with very hard landings. I lift heavy weights. I protect my sleep like it was the most important thing in the world. So much so that even when one of my adult kids says, we're going out to dinner, we're going to make a reservation for 8 p.m. I said, what? 8 p.m. I'm in bed at
Way too late.
8:30. Like, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to miss the social. You guys go. I'm going to go to bed at 8:30. Like, I protect my sleep. Everything that affects my biology, I addressed. I used a multimodal approach. And that is what I said to him. And he just said, keep doing what you're doing. He
Mhm.
didn't say, write it down. I'm going to talk to my other patients. He just said, just keep doing what you're doing. He was encouraged on my behalf, to his credit. But that gets me to something that I think of often. I would like to, this is like my dream. This morning on the treadmill, I was thinking about this. If I could come up with like a one-page flyer that addresses all the things you can do that will improve your bone density in language that can be understood by anyone, no research background, no medical background, and get that into the offices of the clinicians who are seeing patients come in with their DEXA and just say, in addition to recommending the drugs, can you hand them this piece of paper? How much work would that be? And I think maybe I will try to do that. Maybe I will like create an organization that gets that into the healthcare systems and say, just hand out the piece of paper. You don't have to preach it. I mean, who knows how many people would be reached by that? But yeah, I mean, because he did not tell me to do it. I learned it myself. And as he was watching my A1C increase, he did not think it was bad. He kept saying, well, at your age, that's not a bad A1C. It's like, wrong answer. I want my A1C to be as close as 5.4 as it can be. Now, I'll accept if I never get below 5.5. And usually I sit between 5.4 and 5.6, despite eating no carbs. You reach a certain age and insulin just doesn't behave the same way. And I have genetic predisposition, both parents, most siblings. Yeah, I mean, it's like my body wants to be insulin resistant, so I never take my eye off that ball. But he didn't tell me. He didn't say things are creeping up. Maybe you should take a look at what you're eating. It was all from my own reading, listening to podcasts. I have a ton of podcasters, research scientists who promote a ketogenic diet or just a low carb approach to all aspects of your health because it affects everything. It is the most important thing. I can't think of anything that trumps the A1C and glucose control in terms of your overall health. So that is how I learned. I listen to podcasts every day of my life and I make notes. I mean, I learned when I got my master's in health sciences, that was so useful because I learned how to read research studies. I learned the difference between like a prevalence, what prevalence is versus hazard ratio, and all these weird things, and you don't know what they mean. And it helped me know that if I saw a study and it told me what I wanted to hear, but there were 8 participants, and I think, all right, well, that was weak. I'm not interested in reading anything that only had 8 people in it. But now I know like the highly powered studies, the power behind a meta-analysis, which are my current absolute favorite, are meta-analyses. I learned that when I got my master's in health sciences. Otherwise, frankly, not terribly useful degree, but I'm finished with doing school at my age, so Maybe I might still like become a personal trainer or something. I'm pretty passionate about geriatric population. And when I see a lot of older people at my gym, I can tell they're afraid to move. They're afraid to lift up heavy weights. And I think, geez, I wish I was a trainer because I would take them under my wing and slowly, slowly teach them what they can do. I would love to. I would love to do that, but
You should do it. You should do it.
thank you.
As a personal trainer myself, I can tell you, you would be absolutely amazing at doing that. And yeah, it's such an amazing thought to like, why can't we put this on a one page, get this printed up, get it into offices? Like that would be incredible. And also, I think that would probably like never happen, or like to think that some pharmaceutical rep would take the stack of papers and chuck them in the bin. You know what I mean? Like the idea of that is so simple, so amazing, would change so many lives. And at the same time, I'm pessimistic that that would ever be able to be done.
Yeah.
Stinks.
Yeah, and that is where at least I start to sound like tin hat stuff because when I do research online at different organizations that have come into existence to educate women on osteoporosis, and in all of them, the bone drugs are talked about very positively, as well as other factors. They don't exclude the other factors, but they all will say, and they will all throw shade on the social media scare tactics that these drugs are not safe. They all mention that. And I always look to see who funds these organizations, and they are almost 100% funded by pharmaceutical companies. This
Shocker.
is a this is a gigantic problem. And I don't think that we can underestimate the power of the pharmaceutical industry in making sure that the message doesn't get out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
I
it.
know
That's
that
such a
sounds, I know
bummer.
that's, yeah, it sounds crazy, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, unfortunately. Okay. One of the things you mentioned earlier about diet, I think was incredibly insightful. And if one just considered that one thing, I think they could figure out anything they wanted to do for diet, whether they chose a vegetarian diet or a carnivore diet, whatever they want. If they just thought, like, what foods make me feel really full and what foods make me feel hungry? You mentioned that when you eat carbohydrates, you feel very hungry afterwards. And this is why I will tell people, like, things like fruit. Like fruit is not bad for people. I will never plant my flag on that hill and say nobody could ever eat fruit. I know why I keep fruit out of my diet is because I'll eat it and in 30 minutes I don't want more fruit. I want to eat 5 candy bars and have a soda, and it's just inconvenient. It's when you're used to feeling full and satiated all day, you can do, whatever form of fasting very easily. It's super simple and you just don't feel that hungry. To have something that then makes you get on that hunger roller coaster, you just are less willing to do it. So I think that dietary advice was amazing. And like you said, like, are you in ketosis? You don't know. Probably. You probably are, but it's not necessarily about being on any particular diet. It's about what foods make you feel full and what foods make you feel hungry. I love that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that it's the idea of carbohydrates being needed for athletic performance has been getting a lot of airtime recently because there's been some research showing that that is not the case, that you can perform just as well when your main source of energy is fat. And I used to always work out on a relatively empty stomach. I still work out in the mornings. That's when I have the most energy and want to be really active. I do now have a little snack before I work out, and I'll tell you what it is. And I do this about 5 mornings a week. I have about an ounce of raw liver. I cut it up, I freeze it. I cut it up into little pieces of frozen raw liver, 1 or 2 tablespoons of frozen wild blueberries, and a handful of walnuts. And that is what I eat. Now, liver, beef liver especially, tastes terrible. It does not taste good. So that's why I eat chicken liver, because chicken liver has no taste. It's sort of like a water ice feeling.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of food. I will tell you that I just get the most positive energy afterwards. I feel like I can do anything. Of course, it's a great source of iron and vitamin A has all kinds of important roles in the body for bone health and other kinds of health. But I now eat that in the morning, but it's still, and there are no carbohydrates in that really. And I have a great workout. But then there was about a year of influencers telling us for women, never work out without eating beforehand, and you need carbohydrates. And I keep thinking to myself, that I'm not going to change what I'm doing because what I'm doing works. And then very recently, of course, this big study came out saying that, carbohydrates, you don't need them to perform well. And I'm like, yeah, I could have told you that based on my own experience. I think that it's important to continue to read current research and stay on top of it. And of course, it takes forever to get the message out. When there's a big change in something, it could be 10 years before it makes its way into a clinic situation where a doctor is actually changing what they're saying in the clinic. Because what is the old saying? Medicine progresses one funeral at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sadly, I think that's very true. Um, but what were we talking about? Oh, the carbohydrate and yeah. Here's something that I noticed, and I track things. I do write things down, and the people that I mentor and talk to one-on-one, I encourage them, write down. I'll ask them a question like, how much calcium do you consume in a day? Just wondering if they're getting their minimum calcium in their diet. They don't have any idea. And so the first assignment I give them is just get an app and just don't eat any differently and just calculate how much calcium you're getting. Maybe you're only getting 500 milligrams of calcium a day. You need 1,200. And what's your vitamin D? Because even if you got 2,000 milligrams, it's going nowhere if you don't have a good vitamin D status, because vitamin D is what helps us absorb the calcium. So these basic things, but they'll tell me they think their vitamin D is high. Have you had it measured? Then you don't know what it is. If you haven't had it measured, you don't know. Well, if you don't track things, you don't know. So I started tracking my sleep years ago, and I got an Aura ring. And so I hardly need the Aura ring at this point because I know if I've had a good night's sleep or not based on how I feel when my eyes fly open. And when I have a bad night's sleep, when it's very fragmented, I wake up and I'm awake for a long period of time. It takes a long time to get back to sleep. When I do get up, I'm hungry, but not just hungry. I want a bagel with jelly. I want carbs. I'm craving carbs so much. If I don't get out of the house and exercise, which is like a reset button, it's a major reset button, I'm going to cave because hunger wins. I don't care how much willpower you have. Hunger almost always wins. So to avoid hunger, I don't eat carbs. And the only then tricky situation in my life is when I have a very bad night's sleep and I wake up wanting carbs, and I'll do a finger prick, I'll test, my blood sugar will be 115, 120. It's because I
Yeah.
didn't sleep well. And I have to get to the gym even though I'm tired and I have to work out. And then the reset button has been hit, and I want salmon with two big scoops of whole yogurt on top of it. And I know that after I eat that, I'm going to feel 100% back to normal, and I'll take a nap that day. But that's the key in staying away from carbs, is that it 100% controls your appetite, and you don't
Yeah.
want crap. You want good stuff.
Yeah. Well said. I love that. That's such a great explanation. The last question I have for you about exercise. You mentioned obviously strength training. We know how good strength training is for bones. You also mentioned a little bit of impact.
Yes.
For you, what does that mean, and how do you balance kind of the risk versus reward when it comes to impact exercise?
Sure. So I started jumping rope when I started to train. I had the general sense that jumping helped bones. I hadn't actually done the research on that yet. So I thought, well, I'll just get a jump rope because that'd be a great cardio workout too. And it took a while before I could actually get a bunch of jumps in a row without like stumbling. And and that kind of interferes with all the cardio benefits because you're just like stopping and starting constantly. But it didn't take long, a couple of weeks before I was doing pretty well with it. Then I started to research the benefits of jumping, and I just kept jumping rope. I think I jumped rope for a year or two, and I still jump rope before I started to do jumps from higher levels, just what's called a drop jump. So you're standing on a platform, let's say 12 inches, and you literally just step off and land hard on your feet. Um, I didn't really I think that in the beginning, I was bouncing, so kind of bending my knees in an athletic stance, bouncing a little bit from the floor and absorbing the shock. But the goal with bone density is to not absorb the shock, send the shock straight up through your skeleton. That is what you want, right? But you can't hurt yourself doing that. So I have always just had a cautious approach to every new thing that I add. And I had a cautious approach with that. I was using a stepper. Those are generally 8 inches high. And then I used a stool that was 12 inches high. I'm going to say it was about 4 years ago when I started to do box jumps. I didn't think I could. So I actually put the box against a piece of equipment where there was a bar I could hold on to. And while holding on to the bar, I jumped up until my brain said, "Oh, I can do that. I don't think I need to hold on." And then I was able to, and I thought, okay, so now I need the nerve to jump off of it backwards and land hard. And I did it slowly. I did it at first by absorbing the impact. And even within one session, let's say I'm going to do 10 box jumps where I jump up, say on a 20-inch box, and I jump off a 20-inch box. I will be absorbing with soft knees in the beginning. And you don't really feel the impact when you do that. And then I'll do less and less of that soft knees. Never would I jump with my leg perfectly straight. That would be very unwise. But my knee is slightly bent and I don't bounce. I don't let any spring action occur in my knees. And I can feel it. You can feel like a vibration going up through your skeleton. You don't need to do a lot of those, by the way. And bone likes a rest. So even after you've done 5 or 6 of them, you should take a little bit of a rest, a couple minutes, and then go back and do a few more. They have found in studies that that is actually how the bones like to receive this sudden jolt. And they love, that's what they want. That's what bones are begging for is the jolt. And you can control how much impact there is. If you're a very, very unathletic person, then I would say you should probably have that be supervised and not just try it on your own, but be with somebody who's helping you. But that helps most with hip. Jumping and landing hard helps mostly with your hip scores. I do a ton of jumping. I do my heel drops first thing in the morning while I'm brushing my teeth. I just drop down onto my heels, up on my toes, down hard on my heels, up on my toes. And I just do that while I'm brushing my teeth. That matters. I mean, people who only do heel drops, there has been recorded increase in bone density. Heel drops are so easy, so easy. Why wouldn't a doctor in a clinic talk about that, right? Even if you're unathletic and not inclined to go to a gym or work hard, you can do heel drops. You can also do something called like marching, like even while sitting position, a lot of people have dodgy knees. A lot of people my age have dodgy knees. So you can, while sitting, just pound your feet on the floor and send the vibration up as far as it will go in that circumstance. So there are all kinds of like gradations of this impact exercise. I absolutely love to jump. I do it with athletic socks, not shoes, because I don't want a lot of material between my foot and the floor. Um, and I don't do it for a long time, at the most 5 to 10 minutes a day. And it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to jump for a long time to reap the benefits of jumping for your bones. I think it's been a very important part of of my hip bone density improving so much.
Sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like you figured out a great way to be able to incorporate that and keep it really safe. So, absolutely love that. This has been an amazing conversation. I've really appreciated everything that you've learned and the way you're able to share your information. The best thing, my favorite part about all this is your passion and your enthusiasm for the topic and wanting to learn more and share the message is so inspiring and wonderful, Ro. I've really appreciated this conversation. Where can people go to find you to connect with you and your work?
Sure, they can find me at Coffee Books Barbells on Instagram. Um, and my email, if anyone wants to email me directly, they're welcome to, is bonebodyrecomp at gmail.com.
Excellent. Okay, we'll make sure both of those are linked up in the show notes so people can easily find them. And yeah, I'm so grateful for our mutual friend Maggie who introduced us, and
I know.
she's just a sweetheart. And yeah, anybody she recommends is going to be hosted on our show for sure. And you were amazing. You were such an amazing guest, and I really appreciate all your knowledge and insights and your passion. So, Ro, thank you so very much for everything you do, and thank you for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for the invite, Casey. I loved it, every minute of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. And
See
this
you
has been
later.
another episode of Boundless Body Radio.